Welcome to the Tricord Advisors podcast, where we answer life's hard questions to help you make smart decisions with your money. I'm Jeremiah Lee, and this is Randy Barkley. We're both certified financial planners. I'm also a California licensed attorney. Welcome back. We've been talking about retirement, and we've been talking about retirement planning and what that looks like for folks. Some people see that as boring, but ultimately, this is such a key piece for everyone to live, their working days peacefully, but also walk into retirement peacefully. I mean, there's a lot of emotions tied up in you call it cutting that cord, but retiring,
right?
And feeling, am I going to have enough? And not just enough, am I going to get by and not go to zero, but do I have enough to take a trip? Do I have enough to do something with my spouse?
To live my life the way I want to live it?
Yep. And especially for people who have done well, like they've worked hard, they've done well, they have good account balances, but we've seen other people, they just sit there biting their nails. I retired. I have a big, nice nest egg, and I don't know. Right. Mm-hmm. And so part of the planning is putting some detail to that. And we were talking in the last segment, it's figuring out all the income sides, because it's not just your retirement account. A lot of people see it as this one baby sitting here and I just got to protect it. But there's Social Security, there's sometimes pensions or annuities, there's income, there's how you take income out of that.
Yeah, I mean, tax planning, what you pay in interest. I mean, we've had, from 2009 through basically first of 21, we had a phenomenal time where people could refinance the equities on their homes, shot up dramatically. Interest rates were historically very low. We had a way to consolidate and get historically low interest rates. And we encourage people not to borrow more than what they needed to, but take advantage of these low interest rates to get rid of these higher cards. The most disheartening thing for me is when you help somebody through it and you find that they've gone back and just did the exact same thing.
Picked up credit card debt or the things that are not useful.
Drives me. My heart just aches because I can see that they're just moving towards something that's going to be, it's not going to be a good end.
Yeah, it's not a good outcome. And so part of the financial planning we do is the math, but also it's the emotions. But there's a recent study that we were just looking at of kind of trying to quantify the value of a financial advisor. And, they came out, which, of course, we like the study, but it comes out to say there's a 7% value year over year over year on your based on the 401k.
And the 7% is not tied to the rate of return. Whereas a lot of people say, well, what you're telling me is that if we work with you, you're going to give me a 7% greater rate of return. That's not what we're saying. But if we do the tax planning, if we do the budget management, if we do the amount of money that you should pay into your 401k, the estate planning, all the issues. And more importantly, what they're talking about is avoiding the major mistakes. Mm-hmm. Many times people make some major mistakes that they have to pay for years before those mistakes are resolved. Mm-hmm. And having a good financial plan and having a constant advice, what this study showed is that if people can just avoid the major errors and just do the basic, constant planning, taking that advice for what it is and what it's worth is, it has 7% per year in additional better. If you had a doctor that if you sat down and says, if you just follow my regimen and you meet with me once a year, let's say, but you're going to have a 7% advantage as far as age and health and everything else.
Yeah.
How much would that be worth to you?
Yeah, that's right. How many people would jump on that? And if we just turn it over, like you were saying, if it was just straight return, if there was someone who could say, we'll just give you 7% more return with the same risk on your money, I think you have people flocking to that. But what I think it's the same value, but they don't always understand is having someone in your life that's giving you good counsel and taking good advice and moving forward and avoiding some of these major pitfalls is tangible value and to the tune of 7% a year. So some of the pitfalls that we talk about and we see on a regular basis, one is autopilot. We've seen a number of folks who will put they're 30, they got a good job, they start a 401k, they start investing, and they just put on autopilot, which is better than obsessing over it. But they put on autopilot with either way too much risk or what I see more often is way more conservative.
Right.
So they're 30, they don't want to lose any money, and they put it all in a very safe, stable, conservative thing. And they start adding to it. 20 years later, they come back to their account and say, well, this is what I put in, and there's a little bit extra. And they've just been so conservative over that much time. And so adjusting the accounts to what makes sense for their life then is a really good idea. So not being too risky or too conservative. The other one we see, not just the autopilot, but is when you change jobs. We see as a big moment.
Oh my goodness, this is a big deal.
Yeah, people, they got their job, the first job, they are putting in money, they're saving for retirement, they're on track, it looks great. They end up changing jobs. Almost everybody does at some point. When they get to their new job, they look at their new paycheck and say, well, I'll start doing that retirement thing again soon. But at the moment, I'm just going to do this.
Yeah, and they have a chance to kind of rethink it.
Yeah.
And you've got typically some timeline. When you started with a new employer, you got like 6 months or so typically before 401k is offered.
Mm-hmm.
And so during that period of time, people have a tendency just all of a sudden they start spending all their money.
Yeah.
They start spending all of their income plus. They go, well, I can't really save. And it's a terrible mistake.
Yeah.
And you stay in that new job for 10, 15 years and you look back and you say, oh, look at all the time I've wasted.
Right.
I could have had advantage of that. And they didn't do it.
Right. That's one of those pitfalls. It's just a pitfall that people fall into. The other one is a life event. And these ones are hard because you have a real life event, a job loss, a death of a family member, something that's extreme. Right. And we've had a number of clients who will say, hey, I was on track. I was doing well. Then I got to my 40s and this happened. And so I cleaned out my 401k. I used all the money to do this. And sometimes that's your only option, right? But often it's not. Often it's the easiest option, and people will see that as hey, I'm not stealing from myself at the moment. It's just, my future, I'll be fine. I'll figure it out. And they empty these accounts. When looking back, they maybe had 4 or 5 other options that would have allowed them to leave their 401k and let it grow for their future as we'll deal with that emergency. And part of that is having someone in your life to walk through that, to say, what are my other options? What are things I don't know about, either a loan or a refinance or whatever it may be. For example, you can take a loan from your 401k rather than taking out the money and paying all the taxes. Most employers allow you to take a loan from that, an emergency loan. You use that money and then you pay it back over time.
And when you pay it back, what you're doing is you're just paying back the money that you borrow from yourself.
Yeah, that interest you pay goes into your own account.
Yeah, you're paying it right back to yourself.
Right, it's a good asset. So rather than people just dumping and pulling it out, there's an option there. Another item that people will just miss is if they're behind on their retirement accounts, as they approach retirement, they could get what's called catch-up contributions. So after age 50, there's some great rules that allow them to put in extra money. Right. And often at age, not always, but often at those years, the kids may be out of college. They're out of the house, probably, potentially out of college, and you're potentially in some of your highest earning years. And so even if you're behind, if retirement's still 5 or 10 years away, wow, you have some incredible moments to catch up and really change the what your retirement's going to look like. Yeah,
it's interesting. All the studies we've looked at, is it better for you to add more money to your retirement plan, or is it better for you to work another 2 or maybe one or 2 or 3 years? And all the studies come back and say there's so much more economic advantage if you extend your work life by, let's say, 2 years. It does significantly more to the retirement outcome. Yeah. Most people would argue that that's not that significant, but it is. Yeah. It is. It's a huge difference in the outcome.
Well, I think candidly, if you put them together to say, hey, I'm 55, I'm 60, I'm 64, I'm looking at retiring. I don't think it looks that great. I'm not sure what I can do. And we have people who come and we'll do the planning for them and say, okay, here's some piece of advice. Start maxing out your retirement to avoid some taxes now. Right. Work as much as you can. Work for an extra 2 or 3 years, even though it's not happy. That's not your plan A, perhaps. But work a couple more years, and man, that can dramatically change what your retirement looks like. Going from scraping by and worrying to saying, no, we can take that trip as a couple, and we can be involved in these things. And the value I think that we add in that moment, that any financial advisor adds, is the math part of it. To say, if you do this, this is what your future looks like.
Yeah, and I think the math, but also behavior. We need to, in some cases, confront people because they're their own worst enemy. They tell you, well, I can't do this because, I can't do that because. And the issue is we need to dig deeper into that reason for because. And oftentimes it doesn't have what I consider validity. And the issue is are you willing to trade up? Are you willing to trade what could be a phenomenal retirement for this short-term thing that you want right now, whatever that is? And again, we're not trying to be the joy killers all the time. We're trying to help people have more security. There will be a time when you can take advantage of extra income and extra benefit. But there's also times when you have to say no to that and continue on the path, right? It's the discipline of becoming a good ball player. Well, you have to have a coach that'll take you through all the regiment of training and the discipline so that you become the best for what you're trying to accomplish. And the benefit comes at the end, right? Yep.
And the same with retirement. I mean, you're exactly right. As you build through, I mean, man, it's the fourth quarter. It's not the throwaway moment of retirement. Like that's the moment where people really want to enjoy their families, enjoy what they've built. And it's a beautiful moment when people can walk into the retirement that they want.
Let us show you how we can provide you a 7% advantage on your overall financial health. That includes a lot of different things, but most importantly, we can coach you and help you through the process. Until next week, folks, may you grow in wisdom and knowledge. Thank you for listening.